There was once a baker who had a shop in a small town in America. This baker was not a very kind man. He never gave his customers any more bread than necessary for their money, and he never smiled. But he was a very good baker. His bread was the softest bread that you could imagine. Sometimes customers paid for their bread and started eating it there in the shop. And his cakes were really delicious. People came to his shop from all over town. When they walked down the street, they smelled the baker's wonderful bread and his delicious cakes, and they walked right into his shop. But not everyone came inside. Some people just stood outside the shop, smelling and looking in through the windows. The baker didn't like this. Their stomachs are full of the smell of my bread. I'm giving them a free lunch and I get nothing for my hard work, he said to himself. Perhaps there's some way to put those delicious smells in bottles. Then I can sell them just like I sell my bread. One winter morning, very early, the baker was in his shop making bread. He wasn't singing happily while he worked. He was complaining to himself about getting up early, about the cold weather, and about anything that came into his head. In the middle of all this, he looked up and saw someone looking in through the window. It was a young man wearing an old coat. He was looking at the baker's bread, and he was hungry. He was smelling the fresh bread and smiling. When the baker saw him, he felt very angry. That thief outside my shop has a stomach full of the smell of my bread. It's a free breakfast. I get nothing for my hard work while he steals my smells. The man didn't move. He just stood there, closed his eyes, and smelled the fresh bread happily. The baker was really angry now. He walked across the shop, opened the door, and shouted at the man. "Pay me." "Pay you for what?" asked the young man in great surprise. "For the smells that you've stolen," replied the baker. "But I've stolen nothing. I'm only smelling the air." "Air is free," said the hungry young man. "It's not free when it's full of the smells from my shop," replied the baker. "Pay me now or I'll call the police." When the young man didn't pay, the baker took him by the coat and pulled him through the snow to the judge's house. He knocked on the door. After a long time, the judge opened the door in his night clothes. He looked at the baker and the hungry young man standing outside in the street. It was 6 in the morning. What could be so important so early in the day? "This man is a thief. He stole the smells from my shop," said the baker. The judge was surprised, but all he said was, "Come in and tell me your story. But first give me time to dress myself." He went back into the house. After a few minutes, he came back and he took them inside. They all sat down together round a large table. "All right. Tell me everything, baker." "You start," said the judge. He listened quietly. First, the baker told him all about the hungry man who stole all his smells. The judge went on listening. Then the young man told him that air was free and that any man could have as much as he wanted. When they finished telling their stories, the judge was silent for a few minutes. The baker started telling him again of how the other man took all his smells without paying. "Stop. Be quiet. I've decided what we'll do," said the judge. "Young man, do you have any money?" The young man put his hand in his pocket and took out a few coins. He showed them to the judge and said, "Sir, this is all the money that I have in the world." "Give those coins to me," said the judge. The young man put them into the judge's hand. I've listened carefully to both your stories, began the judge. It's true that the smells were coming out of the baker's shop, and these smells belonged to the baker. And it's also true that this young man took those smells without paying for them. And so I say that the young man has to pay the baker for the smells that he took. The baker smiled, perhaps for the very first time in his life. He held out his hand at once for the money. But the judge didn't give him the coins. Baker, listen, and listen carefully, he said. He shook the coins in his hands and they clinked together. I can pay for the smells, he said to the baker. Give me my coins. Sir, said the baker, not smiling anymore. No, said the judge. I've decided that the sound of money is the best way to pay for the smell of bread. And with that, he gave the coins back to the poor young man and told him to go home. And that wraps up our story time here on English Stories. If you enjoyed the adventures of the grumpy baker and the sweet aroma of his treats, give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more fun tales like this one. Now, in the comments below, let me know what you thought of the baker's antics and if you've ever had a similar experience. I love reading your stories, too. Stay tuned for more exciting content on English Stories. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep smiling. Bye for now. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel, English Stories. Today I've got a powerful story to share. A tale of two Buddhist monks and a lesson about living in the present. Let's dive in. Once upon a time, two Buddhist monks were traveling through a forest. One of them was a senior monk and another was a junior monk. They were walking peacefully and with a calm mind to reach their destination. At one point, they came across a river with a strong current of water. To continue their journey, they would need to swim through the river and cross to the other side. As the two monks were preparing to cross the river, they saw a young, beautiful woman sitting at the bank of the river. She was also looking to cross the river, but she did not know how to swim, so she requested the two monks to carry her on their back to the other side of the river. Buddhist monks take a vow of celibacy when they become monks. They are not supposed to even look at a woman. The two monks glanced at each other. They both thought for a moment. The junior monk politely refused and started crossing the river. Then, without saying a word, the senior monk went ahead and picked up the woman on his back. He carried her across the river, placed her gently on the other side of the river, and went on his way to continue his journey. The junior monk could not believe what had just happened. After rejoining his companion, he was speechless without saying a word. He was shocked at the behavior of his fellow monk. He could not stop thinking about how his fellow monk had broken his vow by touching a woman. However, they continued their journey. An hour passed without a word between them. Then 2 hours passed, then 3. Finally, the younger monk could not contain himself any longer and asked the senior monk, "Can I ask you a question?" The senior monk said, "Sure, go ahead." The junior monk said, "I have been thinking about what you did at the river." The senior monk asked, "What did I do?" The junior monk said, "Don't you know what you did? You broke your vow to Buddhism when you touched the woman while carrying her across the river. As monks, we are not permitted to even touch a woman. Then how could you carry that woman on your back for so long?" The senior monk laughed and said, "I dropped that woman on the bank of the river a long time ago. However, it seems that you are still carrying her around in your head. If we see in our lives, we will find that this Buddhism story has a simple and beautiful message in it for us. A message about letting go of the past and living in the present moment. How many times in our lives are we upset about things that have happened in the past? We all experience negative emotions such as guilt, regret, anger, and frustration. In our life, we hold on to these hurts and resentments in our mind, forgetting that the past is gone and cannot be changed. The longer we dwell on these thoughts, the more we suffer like the junior monk. On the other hand, the senior monk carried the woman across the river. Then he dropped the woman there, and with it he also dropped all the emotional baggage of that event in the past and moved on to the next. He knew that clinging to the past only causes pain, and freedom lies in letting go of the emotional baggage. He showed us how to live in the present and move on with our lives. Similarly, we can also heal our suffering by choosing to release the shadows of the past and focus on the present moment. This Zen story reminds us of the timeless wisdom that true freedom lies not in changing the past, but in accepting it, being mindful, and having the courage to let go. We should always remember that the past is a memory and the present is a gift, and we must appreciate the gift of the present by releasing the burden of the past. Hard word: celibacy, the state of abstaining from marriage and sexual relations. Vow, a solemn promise or commitment. Dissentments, strong disagreement or opposition. Contemplation, the action of thinking deeply about something. Incredulous, unwilling or unable to believe something. Fortitude, courage in pain or adversity. Metaphorical, symbolic or representative, not literal. Astutely, perceptively intelligent or wise. Monastic, relating to monks, monasteries, or their way of life. Vigorous, strong, active, and full of energy. Thanks for tuning in, friends. Remember, like those monks, we all carry baggage. Drop it, live in the now, and embrace the present. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more wisdom on English stories. Until next time, take care and let go of that baggage.